From the Lincoln Journal-Star, this is the Life in the Red podcast with Luke Mullin and Amie Just.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Life in the Red podcast. Luke and Amie here with you once again. Now, a little bit into September, we're at that point where I was like, it's like 50, 60 degrees in the morning, like 90 degrees a day. Interesting weather, but it was really nice weather for that Nebraska game against Colorado this last weekend.
Yeah, I woke up in the morning, went on a 6-mile run. It was 45 degrees outside. It felt like fall. Fast forward to yesterday, and it's hot again. I'm like, can we just have fall?
Yeah,
Not this false fall crap.
I got the sweatshirt out of the closet for one day and put it straight back.
Yeah.
The one sweatshirt that I own.
Yeah.
I only own one.
Only one. It may be currently 85 as we record this, but I'm in a sweatshirt today because I'm just willing fall into existence despite the actuality outside.
Yeah, the Halloween decorations, they're starting to get out too.
Oh, I put those out on the 1st of September.
Absolutely.
I love Halloween.
No, I'm ready. I'm ready for the fall vibes, ready for the fall football to get into action. And we'll, of course, break down this big Nebraska win over Colorado in full detail. But some quick updates for you this week around Husker sports. The Nebraska soccer team, they're out on the West Coast for 2 matches and defeated Oregon State 2-1 before they lost to Portland. So split those matches. And then Big Ten play starting this week on the road at Iowa Thursday night and not back to Hibner Stadium till September 26th. So long time on the road there for the Nebraska soccer team. But also big news this week, Nebraska volleyball defeating Creighton 3-2. Big top 10 matchup. And for anybody, we'll have the full breakdown, full volleyball podcast. Amie and I will be there with our Brent Wagner. So look for that online here at journalstar.com this week as well. We'll have that in full detail. But a lot to get into about this Colorado game. And let's just start with the scene on the field. Both me and you, we were there. The fans are storming. I mean, it's chaos. The players, they're getting hugged, celebrated, taps on the helmet. I mean, it was just
pulled
crazy.
On the shoulders. Yeah. It was just wild.
I mean, what a scene it was. I think just the emotion of the day was kind of full out there on display. And we were just struck. There were so many people in downtown Lincoln that day. I mean, the vibe was it was such a big game feel to things.
Yeah. Former friend of the pod, Wilson Moore, went out to go get a bagel at 9, 10 a.m. and the line was out the door and apparently that doesn't happen very often. So yeah, from a very, very early moment on Saturday, it was different for sure.
Yeah. And I think especially the way that things played out with Nebraska winning the toss, deferring, sending the defense out there right away. I mean, that was so loud, that first series that Colorado was dealing with. I mean, just the juice in the stadium.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then for the defense to come out the way that they did and set the tone really early and just kind of destroy Colorado's offensive line from the jump, it was incredible.
Yeah. I mean, really, the tail of the game, I think, was that Nebraska defense early on. Just Colorado never in rhythm. I mean, it was Shedeur Sanders. He ran for his life last year. It was even worse this year for him.
Yeah. A couple sacks that were negated by penalties, so it could have been even worse for him, including that, what was it, 11-yard sack by Briswell? Jeez Louise. I think it may have been even bigger than that. But how did I describe it? I think I described Colorado's offensive line as cotton candy left out in the rain.
Dissolved quickly?
Yes.
Yeah. Tony White said on film that reviewing that game, Colorado's offensive line was discombobulated, was what he worded.
That is such a kind way to put it.
To say, they were getting run over and run past on every snap.
It was a diplomatic way to put it.
I mean, it was just hats off to the Nebraska defensive line. Ty Robinson is the guy who gets a lot of the headlines because he was in the backfield pretty much the entire game when he was out there. Also got in there on the field goal block. Him and Nash Hutmaker, that's the scuttlebutt that both him and Nash got the hand in there. At least that's what Matt Rhule said on his coach's show. Tony White kind of alluded to it. Nash maybe deserving a little credit on that field goal block too. But I mean, it was the entire defensive line. I like Jamari Butler. They lined him up on the interior a little bit more. Nash didn't play as many snaps, since it was such a pass-heavy matchup. Kai Wallen got in there, James Williams, these guys that are pass rushing specialists. I mean, Nebraska let those pass rushers go to work. It was impressive.
Yeah, and Shedeur never had a clean pocket. all game.
Yeah.
He made some throws, but he never had a clean pocket. He was under duress the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the timing. The timing was so sped up. That was really difficult for Colorado. And then the other thing, too, I mean, they couldn't run the ball. That was also the case in last year's matchup. But then, we don't need to just dissect every play, but obviously, they had that fourth down. They run the ball for like one of the only 2 times all game. It's like, what are they doing?
That was a very dumb play call. Like, running the ball isn't working for you. Why? That was so stupid.
Yeah, but I mean, because of the lack of the run game, it was a real test for the Nebraska secondary. And I was watching the way that they were set up defensively, and I was really impressed with the cornerbacks. There were some times too where John Bullock, the linebacker, he got sucked out in some one-on-one coverage. They're playing Isaac Gifford, I thought, a lot closer to the line of scrimmage than I maybe would have thought. I maybe thought you would want to keep a deep safety, with this passing offense. But those defensive backs for Nebraska, they did a great job not letting those big plays get over them. I think Matt Rhule said there were four explosive plays.
They wanted to, but you'll take that, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to even more, as Shedeur can and has shown that he can do.
Yeah. They didn't allow the 50, 60, 70-yard touchdown, that type of backbreaking play. And I think it obviously showed up those coverage skills on that Tommy Hill pick six. Just got out of the break, immediately saw that pass was going his way, timed that jump perfectly. And I mean, he was in the end zone before anybody knew what happened.
Oh, yeah. No, you could see it like unfolding. Shedeur was, making his reads, and defense had it covered. I think that was his third read, if I'm not mistaken. And Tommy just jumped it and played it perfectly.
Yeah, such an important play in that game. Nebraska, I mean, they just had that momentum the entire first half, and it was 28-zip at halftime. And it was kind of a question of, okay, how is the second half going to go? Well, really, Nebraska, they didn't do anything offensively. They didn't do anything. They had one drive where they actually held onto the ball, got a few first downs, but it was really a slow burn there. Defense did what they needed to do to get the job done, but second half, not good enough.
No, lots of penalties, lots of flags, I guess I should say. Not all of them were probably penalties, but there was no rhythm to the second half, whether that was Nebraska's offense not finding a flow, all the flags, it felt like it trudged on forever.
Agree. Yeah, especially when that fourth quarter, you're getting down to those final minutes of the game. Especially, people, I think there was that restlessness, inside the stadium of like, hey, let's just get that final horn, celebrate things. But definitely I do agree. I mean, it was not as cohesive offensively as you'd like. And Matt Rhule, he was kind of saying like, hey, we weren't like trying to close up shop. We were still trying to be aggressive, but I don't think it was really reflected on the field. I mean, whether that was mental, play calling, I mean, it was obviously a combination of factors, but it just was not the same offense that was out there in the first half.
No, and you wonder if some of those flags don't happen, right? Like they do put another touchdown or two on the board. You have that Ramir touchdown that gets called back, and then you have a handful of solid plays from Jacorny. Jeez, I can't talk today. From Barney that get called back. So yeah, you wonder if they would have scored once or twice more. And then maybe the final score would have reflected that a little bit, but can't go back and change the past.
Absolutely. But you mentioned Ramir there. Let's talk about that run game a little bit. Just looking at the snap counts, this was kind of like a case across the entire roster, regardless of position. I mean, it was a veteran game. They were not throwing the freshman out there. I mean, Barney, obviously, but he's a difference maker. But realistically, I mean, it was 100 players saw the field against UTEP. I think I counted it up. It was under 50. I mean, it was like 48 or something like that saw the field in this one. So that running back rotation, it was Dante Dowdell and it was Ramir. I mean, Gabe Irvin and Emma Johnson, they got in late in that fourth quarter, but it was Ramir and it was Dante. I mean, is that a sign of what's to come for this team?
Maybe. I think that they wanted to go more bully ball type situation, bigger, more physical in this game because they knew it was going to be. So I wonder if that changes this week a little bit, if there's more of a rotation based on the defense that they're going to face. But they both looked really good, really dominant. I mean, Dante literally broke someone's arm. That's how physical he was playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it after that UTEP game a little bit, but I mean, he is just completely the running back that you want to see. I mean, physical, tough runner, apart from that fumble, obviously. But I mean, man, he just looks like the full package out there at running back when it comes to picking up those tough yards. And then, you do have Ramir or Emma Johnson come in as that third down back. It leaves Gabe Ervin, I think, in a tough position with how well Dowdell is playing. Marcus Satterfield, he's spoken in these last couple of weeks saying, hey, we don't want like four guys that are on equal footing. You want somebody to make that leap. And I don't think that it's fully, separated between those running backs. But so far, I mean, Dowdell's play, he's got to be the lead guy from here on out.
Oh, yeah, you would think so. And then obviously Ramir has played really well, too, in the past game as well. Mm-hmm. That like bizarre touchdown that he had. Very strange. And then the one, obviously, that ended up getting called back. He's going to want more of those, and he has the skill set to be able to do that and complement all of the weapons that are already in the pass game.
Yeah, and I mean, he's actually like, I'm really impressed with Ramir about his toughness, and maybe this is just, it's just like our perception maybe, outside the game. You see those shorter running backs and you just think, oh man, like those guys are going to get eaten up if they're running inside. Well, I mean, he is tough runner. Like Nebraska, they're not running him between the tackles a lot. They like to run him off tackle, but I mean, right into the heart of the defense, right there, linebackers closing in. I mean, he hits that hole really fast. I mean, he is a good runner on those looks, and Nebraska's looked really good with those opportunities as well. Both those guys setting up a lot of play action and some good run game from that Nebraska team. And as we talk about this offense, we haven't mentioned Dylan Rhule because he would have what I would say was kind of like a steady game. He wasn't super flashy, but really took care of the ball, moved the offense, and didn't turn the ball over in that big moment.
Yeah, I would use game manager, and not in a disparaging way. Like for management in that one, limit mistakes, put people in positions to succeed. Yeah, his numbers would have popped off the charts a little bit more if he had connected to Jalen Lloyd on, that would have been what, 40, 50
yarder. Yeah. Yep.
So, okay, that would have popped off a little bit more. But again, managed the game really well. That game was a run-first game. And in those situations, yeah, his stats aren't going to jump off the page. But you know what? No interceptions, no fumbles, clean game, and not sacked. Not even once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought he played phenomenally, even if the stats weren't that way. And I think that was echoed by what Matt Rhule had to say this week. Some interesting public comments. He said that the rest of the offense needed to match Rhule's intensity, and then also the knowledge of the playbook. He was just kind of using an example about how Rhule knows all the plays, and if you're a junior, you better be on that same level. I mean, I don't think that was necessarily a case of like, hey, let's call out the rest of the offense, but it was definitely like, this guy is operating at such a high level. We all got to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. So with all that, that big win in the books, Nebraska, they're ranked. They're back in the poll, number 23 in the AP Top 25. First appearance in that poll since early in the 2019 season. You ranked Nebraska, I believe.
I did.
What kind of went into it for you?
Yeah, so it was a couple of things. I put them at number 20, which is nowhere near the highest that someone has them. I think some guy has them at 12. So it's been
That's playoff. They're going to the playoff in that guy's eyes.
I'm not ready for that. Yeah. But for starters, they looked good. They didn't look perfect, but they looked good. They got the win. They won in a game that they may or may not have won last year. And then it was a down week for teams down the ballot. My beloved alma mater lost. And several other teams that were ranked, in the 20 to 25 range also lost. So that opened up a bunch of opportunities for new blood to get in there, and Nebraska being one of them. I also ranked Northern Illinois after they took down Notre Dame in South Bend, which is very impressive. Couple other teams moving on up. I did rank Illinois. That was a team that didn't end up making the top 25, but that makes things a little curious if we're looking a little bit further down the road into next week, because that could be interesting. But yeah, no, so several things kind of playing into that.
Yeah, there was a ton of movement there at that bottom half of the poll, but hey, Nebraska will take it. Matt Rhule, as he often does, downplaying it. Oh, we don't care about the ranking, and
Yes,
I
you
don't.
do.
Yeah, it's not the be all end all, but nice to know where you stand there on that national stage, and I think that's kind of been the mood around Lincoln this week overall. Like, yeah, there was that big game against Colorado. It was all about blocking out all the noise and stay into your process. Well, now they're still doing the same thing. They're just saying that, hey, you got to leave all that in the past, that big win over Colorado, because all about that 1-0. That's all they talk about, going 1-0 this week. And some of the key things that they were talking about from that Colorado game: perimeter blocking, special teams.
Both were bad.
Yeah. Especially that I was watching some of those, man, there were some tough plays that perimeter blocking. Like there was that one Thomas Fidone swing pass that I think two wide receivers whiffed their blocks. Some of the other, like Ja'Cory Barney, trying to get him to the outside. Some of that's been really lacking. And then I think we dove into the special teams miscues. Everybody's seen that. I think, how the field goal, the kicking has just not been great enough. And Colorado nearly popped off that kick return. So some of those small things, that's kind of been the focus as Nebraska gets ready for Northern Iowa. But before we break down the Panthers, let's get into our Husker hot topic for the week. Relevant because of this big win that Nebraska just had, everything we mentioned, them being ranked in the top 25. Matt Rhule, he has a reputation for rebuilding programs. That's a big reason why he came here to Nebraska. Of course, it starts in year 1 to year 2 improvements. When you can really take the guys that you've developed for a year and make those improvements. Well, here's the track record he has from Temple: 2-10 to 6-6, 4-win improvement. At Baylor, went from 1-11 to 7-6, 6-win improvement. So that's the question for today. Is Matt Rhule's year 2 transformation happening at Nebraska?
Yeah, I think so. I do think, though, that, and he's talked about this before, that what he inherited here was a much, much, much better situation than he inherited at Temple, and then light years better than what he inherited at Baylor. I wrote about that a little bit last year for our season preview, because he inherited one of the worst situations in college football history when he took over at Baylor. So comparing the two, yeah, it's kind of in the same realm, but Nebraska was in a much better spot. But I do think that Nebraska's on a trajectory once again for a Matt Rhule team to make a leap between year 1 and year 2.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that just comparing the 2023 Colorado game to this year's game, I mean, it is just night and day. The defense was incredible last year. They're incredible again this year, and gotten better in some aspects too. The offense completely transformed from last year. And I just think the talent level in the program, not just the guys who are out there on the field. I mean, we saw that in the game against UTEP too. All the freshmen, the young players that they've been bringing up in this program. The way he's transformed this roster has been super impressive. And then there's the guys too that are, of course, already on Nebraska that have just completely elevated their game. I think you're looking pretty much everywhere on defense. I think pretty much every guy on that field that was there when Matt Rhule came as head coach, this new coaching staff took over. Tony White came with this scheme. They've all improved. I mean, that is just a testament to this entire coaching staff. And as we kind of look, long term, yes, it's not probably as dramatic as those other 2 places that he was at, but it's the same thing.
Maybe it will be.
Yeah,
though.
You never know.
The schedule plays a big factor into that too, right? Nebraska doesn't have to play Michigan, though they are down a little bit this year. Don't have to play Penn State. That helps. One of the 3 horsemen, so to speak, that you do have is Ohio State, but that's, after a nice stretch where, in theory, Nebraska can build some confidence and continue to move up in the polls, because there are some teams that are having down years this year that are on Nebraska's schedule. So maybe it is a big jump from last year to this year.
Yeah, I mean, it'll certainly, the way things are looking, it looks like there should be a significant win total increase there. And yeah, I just think it just shows that his process is still working. We're in a different era of college football, but still recruiting high school players, developing them for multiple seasons. That is still, I think, showing up. And again, he's elevated this Nebraska program. So yeah, we expect this season, a lot of that to continue because of, as you said, the schedule does set up nicely for him. And this week's opponent, Northern Iowa, they welcome an FCS opponent to town. Northern Iowa, they are 2-0 this season. But last week, really a surprisingly close 17-10 win over St. Thomas, a lot closer than a lot of people expected that one. And it's a different type of test for Nebraska, especially from the Northern Iowa offense. They got a quarterback, Aiden Dunn, just took over the starting role this season. Doesn't throw a lot. He was 11 of 25 for 99 yards in this most recent win. And that is because Northern Iowa, they run the ball. And they run it a lot. 298 and a half rush yards per game. Again, these are two FCS opponents that they've played. But I mean, just really impressive dedication to the run. And then Ty Edwards is a guy that Nebraska has to be really worried about. 10.7 yards per carry this season.
Yeah. Nebraska's run defense through the first two games, granted against spread teams, is in the top 10 nationally.
Yeah, what are they allowing, like 40 yards a game or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't really played a team that runs much. So this is going to be an incredible test for them. If they can stop this team, granted, they're FCS, but if they can stop this team, they can stop anybody. And it'll be a really good test for them in the run-heavy Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, this was like going into week one, all the talk about the season opener was like, hey, let's just go against somebody different than who you're practicing all day. Well, you get those two pass-heavy offense looks. Now you get the run-heavy, certainly ahead of a short week against an Illinois team that will be physical, run-heavy up front too. That will be good preparation. And the way that this game is going to go, at least how I expect it to kind of shake out, I think Northern Iowa, they're going to try to avoid giving up the big plays defensively. I think limiting the possessions, not so much like playing the field position game. I think that they'll need to be aggressive in doses, obviously. But I think it's more of a case of grind out the game, make it a real four-quarter battle. That'll be what Northern Iowa will be looking to do. Don't want to fall behind early because that will be really, really difficult for them to get back from. And worth noting the history here, Northern Iowa last win over an FBS team was 2016. They took down Iowa State. Nebraska 14-0 against FCS teams.
I remember that game. That was wild.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a good one. Definitely. But, I remember the 14-0 Nebraska FCS. You remember the McNeese State game?
I do indeed.
Yeah. That was nearly when it all came crumbling down.
That was one of my family's Super Bowls because my cousin played volleyball at McNeese and her husband played football there. So for a while that day, they were loud and rowdy.
Yeah, it looked really bad for Nebraska for a while. Thank goodness for Amir Abdullah.
Yeah,
he saved that day. So, I mean, that's just a word of warning. Even some really good Nebraska teams in the past, you never know with these FCS opponents.
Hey, it looked bad against North Dakota not too terribly long ago.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. But let's get into our game predictions then. What do we expect for this one? I'm going with a hearty Nebraska win, 38-10.
45-14.
Yeah. I mean, pretty sizable favorites. I think we both expect that the defense should limit Northern Iowa's scoring overall. Be interested to see just how effective this Nebraska offense is. If they can, I mean, there is an opportunity for them, I think, to go out in this first half and really get the job done as they did against UTEP. Does it take them a while to get going? Is it really more of a run-based game? I mean, I'm just interested to see how the game plan shakes out.
Yeah, me too.
Yep. And as we get into that, the final word, what are we watching for this week?
How does Nebraska's defense hold up against the run game? Like I said earlier, it's the first time that they've really been tested in that area. I think we're going to see a lot more of Nash this week because he's incredible at stopping the run. How many tackles for loss does he have? How active are the linebackers in this run stopping, especially in the first half when you don't have Bear?
Yeah.
As of right now, Nebraska put in an appeal. Those rarely ever go well. But there's a first time for everything, right? But so that's kind of what I'm looking for. Just how does, especially that first half, go for Nebraska in the run game?
Yep, definitely a good one. I'm also interested in the run game on the Nebraska side. As we mentioned earlier, is that running back rotation look any different? I'm hoping to see a little bit more out of Emma Johnson, maybe Gabe Irvin too this week. Dante Dowdell, he's looked so good. Interested to see if that continues. And then also offensively, just the week Ja'Cory Barney finally breaks a big one. Also maybe on a kick return too. But I mean, he's been electric. He's been so close, maybe one tackle stopping him. And this could be the week he finally pops one.
I think so. I think the situation could present itself for that.
Absolutely. Well, it's another night game. Should be another good atmosphere there inside Memorial Stadium. 6:30 here Saturday night. Huskers welcome Northern Iowa for this one. So, as always, appreciate all of you listeners and you viewers coming back to us. That'll do it for this episode of the Life in the Red podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's Life in the Red podcast. Our theme music is composed by Sasha Indy. The stories continue on journalstar.com.